What's going on, guys? Bitcoin finally did it. Bitcoin broke that $100,000 barrier. And currently, as of this video, as of this upload, maybe not as of editing, but right now it's still over 100,000. In this video, we're going to look at Bitcoin's chart. We're going to look at what Jerome Powell said about Bitcoin, and he equates it to gold, not currency, which I'd agree with. You can't print unlimited Bitcoin, am I right? We're also going to look at a Bitcoin miner that is not only mining Bitcoin. Is this a strategy that we see others get into as we approach Altseason? We'll also look at what the spot Bitcoin ETFs are doing lately. And Jerome Powell says Bitcoin cannot be seen as a US dollar competitor due to its high volatility. It's highly volatile. It's not a competitor to the dollar. It's really a competitor to gold. That's how I think about it. Comments like that from Jerome Powell, I think, did help Bitcoin pump over 100K. I don't think it's a coincidence. Bitcoin being seen as gold and not currency, I think is a positive when nations look at Bitcoin. They don't want Bitcoin to compete with their currency. This also shows that Jerome Powell is thinking about Bitcoin. Rather than just saying no comment, rather than saying I don't care, I don't know about Bitcoin, I don't give a shit, he equates it to gold. And this statement here by Jeff Park of Bitwise really kind of sums things up and shows you how much things have changed. From this day forth, you're no longer permitted to ask me to waste my breath and energy on the investment case for Bitcoin, because it's not 2014 anymore. It's 2024. Now we have Powell, Fink, Druckenmiller, and other credible voices of monetary policy and investment leadership. If you asked these names 10 years ago what they thought about Bitcoin, they probably would be a bit negative about it. Someone like Larry Fink 10 years ago wouldn't have told you that he'd be as involved in Bitcoin as he is now. 10 years ago, I don't think Powell would have said, I'm going to compare gold to Bitcoin in the future. Now, I also want to talk about the spot Bitcoin ETFs. They saw $676 million in one day as they catch up to Satoshi's holdings. And this $676 million of inflows on Tuesday was nearly double that of Monday, which was $353 million. The spot Bitcoin ETFs net assets held overall is $104 billion. They have crossed the $1 billion mark. They have around 1,076,000 Bitcoin, which is close to the 1.1 million Bitcoin held by Satoshi Nakamoto. And then next is going to be MicroStrategy down the road, passing Satoshi. And that's not it. We also saw some Ethereum ETF inflows. We saw 133 million flowing in there, which is a positive. The spot Ethereum ETFs are starting to wake up. Altseason is approaching. Some would say Altseason is here. We are on the verge of big changes, says the Valentine founder, Opchakovich. Sorry if I said that wrong, but Opchakovich says we are on the verge of big changes where ETFs, crypto ETFs, are an important part of one big puzzle. Now here's something interesting, a company called Bitmining. They're not only mining Bitcoin, but they're also mining Doge and Litecoin. This might be a Bitcoin miner to get into, to look into at least. I don't know much about this one yet. There was a scandal with them previously as a different company before they became a Bitcoin miner. We'll talk about that in a second. Bitmining shares are actually down 37% year to date. And this previously was an online sports lottery company called 500.com. They're now 1% of the total network hash rate for Doge, Litecoin, and Bell's coin, whatever that is. Now, do other companies want to follow suit? Are other companies thinking about getting into other proof of work mining besides Bitcoin? Words from CleanSpark tells us no. However, Mara in the past has mined Caspa. But yeah, CleanSpark, TerraWolf, they have no interest in mining anything else besides Bitcoin. And check this out about that Bitmining company, the 500.com. So before they were Bitmining, they were 500.com. And they recently admitted to authorize the paying of bribes to Japanese officials to try to win a resort and casino license in their former life back in 2017 and 2019 before they were a Bitcoin miner. They agreed to $10 million worth of fines to the US government to resolve the charges. So these guys aren't known for honesty. They aren't known for doing things the right way necessarily. Be cautious if you're going to invest in them. That said, it's a Bitcoin miner. It's probably going to rally with Bitcoin. It's probably going to end the year on a good note. Wall Street's going to pile in again once they see that the Bitcoin miners are approaching that profitability. And with Bitcoin here, make no mistake, the Bitcoin miners are well into profitability. Look at the difference of Q3, which was just reported for most Bitcoin miners, versus Q4. Huge difference. Q3 was about an average of $60,000, I'd say, dipped all the way to 49,000, went as high as about 70,000 during Q3. Q4 has pretty much been blasting off this whole time. And Q4 isn't over yet. We have the rest of December. Maybe we end at 110,000. Maybe we end slightly under 100,000. But either way, Bitcoin has been treating the Bitcoin miners very well lately. What do we have in store in 2025? How profitable are these Bitcoin miners going to be in 2025? How many consistent quarters of profitability are we going to see to end this cycle? Much more than last cycle, I can tell you that much. Now, looking at Bitcoin, it is following this longer term broadening pattern. Maybe we come to the end of December and test 110, 115K. Would not surprise me with how Bitcoin acts. One thing we are noticing is some bearish divergences. You're seeing the price rise while the RSI is cooling down. And because of how much Bitcoin has been running recently, the moving averages have continued to rise as well. They are lagging indicators, but they are slowly catching up to Bitcoin's price. They are slowly increasing as Bitcoin continues up, as Bitcoin holds its gains. Now the 50 MA is at 82,000. The 200 MA is in the 60s. I highly doubt we're going to see the 200 MA anytime soon. It might be down the road when the 200 MA is much higher in price. I do think at some point during this bull run we will test the 50 MA. That doesn't mean we have to test 81, 82K necessarily right now, but at some point in 2025 we will probably test it. It could be at 100,000 by then, while Bitcoin is much higher, but then we retrace and test that 50 MA, see how it holds up. These are going to be major indicators to keep an eye on in 2025. Let me show you last cycle what I mean by that. There will be times that we come down and we test the 200 or the 50 MA. Here's a test of the 50 MA here, another test of the 50 MA here, and you'll see that it was held up and it kept going until it was broken. Once it was broken, started putting a little bit of fear in Bitcoin. We came up to try to test it. It was not able to sustain and hold it, and we fell from it. Then we tested the 200 MA. It found that as resistance as well, and continued finding the 50 MA as resistance, kind of like a magnet. Magnets, if you put them in the directions that they don't go together, they push off of each other. And that's kind of what it was doing here until it finally broke over. And you see this clear reaction, a positive reaction on the break of the 50 MA. And then once you get that golden cross and the rally over them again, you get them curling up again, and you see another little rally before you break through them again and find them as resistance points here and there. Make no mistake, as we rally, there will be times when we pull back. Maybe at some point in 2025, we have a considerable correction before we finish on our rally and go higher. Following every Q4 of a halving year, we should end this year somewhat strong. I would expect that. And this is going to be great for the Bitcoin miners. As Q4 finishes up, as Bitcoin keeps its gains, things look that much better for the Bitcoin miners. Now, I do want to zoom in a little bit on the shorter term and show you guys kind of what Bitcoin did. How did it break out? Well, we were facing this descending resistance that we were talking about the other day. We finally saw that break out of it, and that caused a huge positive reaction. The market did react to this descending resistance. In fact, we did get our spike over 100K. Now it is a matter of us holding it. Maybe we come down and test some previous levels, test some of these levels on this descending resistance, such as the roughly 99,000 previous top, such as the roughly 98.5 that we hit a couple of times. We may come down and test these and see how they hold up and break it back into 100,000. We may simply just hold 100,000 and keep trying to run. Bitcoin during this time in its cycle can keep going, can keep not making sense. When you think it's due to cool down, it might run more. Now I want to pull up the weekly. I haven't done this in a while, but I've did this from time to time. I want to show you guys that we have not been as overbought yet as last cycles. I think there is more juice to go. Following the cycles, I would expect we continue on based on just the timeline of the cycles, but also if you look at the RSIs here, you'll see that in the last cycles we have been way higher on the RSI before we top out. The RSI at least makes it over 90 before we start our topping out process. There have been times that it tops out lower, but then it goes and rallies more. I personally think at some point we will see a more overbought RSI than we did see back in March of 2024 when Bitcoin rallied to 79K before that major correction. The RSI nearly reached 90. I do think we are going to see an RSI at 90 on the weekly before we top out. That is one thing that I'm looking at as an indicator, among other factors such as the MVRV score, and of course where we are based on the timeline. Thanks as always for watching, guys. Sorry my camera just died. How are you feeling now that Bitcoin is over 100K? Do you think it's going to hold up 100K, or are we going to retest some levels in the 90s and potentially lower? If we do, take that as a buying opportunity. We won't get many more this cycle before it's time to be very, very cautious with Bitcoin. If you're still planning on buying Bitcoin or the Bitcoin miners, these are the last times to do so. Thanks as always for watching, guys, and I'll see you on the next one.